Hey everyone, welcome to Tech Tip Talk. I am Sarah Walworth.
I am Christina McGrath, and we are Knitting Tech Editors.
So, here on Tech Tip Talk, we answer your questions about pattern writing and knitting design and tech editing. And we invite you now, if you're joining us live, to put any questions you have for us into the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. So,
Joining us this month is knitting designer Victoria Marchant, who incidentally is the first non-tech editor designer we have had on the broadcast. We are pretty pumped about that. In addition to being a designer, what really got our attention is Victoria's blog. She has a lot of fantastic articles about fitting fat bodies, and all kinds of accessibility topics. We're really excited to get her take on sizing and fit, and we know that you are too. We've got some good questions for her, Sarah. So
awesome. So, should we go ahead and bring her in?
yes, let's get her in here.
All right. Hey, Victoria.
Hi.
Let me get
Thank you so much for joining us and getting on here with us. We're so excited to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get opinionated.
We are too. We first thought we would have a byline of our book would be the opinionated editors. I don't know if we're going to go for that, but we are definitely opinionated, and we're happy to join you there.
It's a good place to be.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start just right at the beginning of your design career, and let us know, how did you get started working as a knitwear designer?
Well, it really happened kind of through chance, as all the best things do. My daughter and I are both autistic, and when she started school, we just couldn't find any suitable after school care for her. So I had to leave my job so that I could look after her. I used to work in IT. I was a technical project manager. I ran like massive upgrade projects. I spent most of my time working on the software that investment bankers use to trade on the stock market. So it was like really big scale, important stuff. And when I stopped doing that, I was just bored all the time. My brain just sort of went, oh, I'm turning into mush here. So quite naturally, I think I turned to my knitting and started trying to make that more, exciting, more appealing, more interesting, running it a bit more like a project. And then I started knitting garments, and, I was there browsing Ravelry, because this was before the Ravelry shenanigans. And it was just really limiting, like, what garments I could knit that would fit me, because even the ones that went up to my size didn't suit my body shape. They just, like, I physically wouldn't have been able to wear them because of the proportions, because my body is nothing like the size charts. So I pretty much had to do it myself if I wanted to make anything fit me. And from there, I sort of quite naturally started having my own ideas and thinking, well, if I'm changing garments to fit me, how hard can it be? So I thought, okay, well, let's start doing some designs, and it'll give me something to do, keep my brain busy. And somewhere between deciding to give it a go and actually putting a pattern out, I decided, no, okay, this is a business. Let's just do it properly and see what happens. And here we are. So 2 years in, and garments are coming.
Yay! And then I'm so excited about the garments you have coming, because they've been getting a lot of attention. And we often remind people that it's true that no body is going to fit exactly into a sizing standard chart, right?
Yeah, and that's there's probably one somewhere, but it's definitely not this one.
There's always going to be something that's off. It's never going to be like exactly perfect to your body, but it's so important to have like that starting place,
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that you just took the reins. You're like, okay, I just need to design for my body then. This is what needs to happen. And that makes us super excited. So from a designer's perspective then, let's talk about what is size inclusivity and why is it so important to pattern production. So you talk about the fact that these patterns that you worked were in your size. So there was included in their size range, it was there. But maybe that wasn't the full picture of what we need to understand here.
Yeah, so the sort of general definition of size inclusivity that knitters seem to be on board with is fitting a body that has a full bust measurement of 30 to 60 inches, which is a really good start. But there's something else I heard a term for it recently, shape inclusivity, which I really like, because I think it goes a bit further than that, and it doesn't limit you to just thinking about the bigger sizes. So shape inclusivity is the idea that a pattern doesn't just fit a large range of sizes, but it maybe includes instructions or some level of guidance or scaffolding for altering the fit in certain places so it can better fit knitters whose bodies don't match the size chart. So if you included even just, keep knitting for 6 more inches to make it longer, that's a step towards shape inclusivity, because obviously height's got nothing to do with weight. So by sort of distancing those two measurements instead of tying them together, you let more knitters make something that's actually going to fit their bodies rather than just be, the same size as all the ready-to-wear options.
So including modifications, like points in the pattern where the knitter can make it fit their own body shape.
Yeah, I mean, some of it might be a full-on modification, and some of it might just be an extra bit of information that the designer has that the knitter might need to know. Like if you want to lengthen a jumper, if it's a boxy jumper that doesn't have any shaping, I think most people know or can work out how to do that, but they might not know how much more yarn they need. Whereas the designer probably does or can do in, 3 minutes by updating their spreadsheet. So by including that information, they're making the pattern more accessible for people who might need to make those modifications. It could be that straightforward as saying, every extra inch needs X many more yards. Or it might be something really out there that gives you a really detailed breakdown of how to do a specific modification because you can see how to do it in this pattern. So you just go ahead and share that information with everyone. I don't think you can give a nice, neat definition like you can with size inclusivity, because it really depends on the pattern and what it is and the construction method. There's a huge difference between making a triangular shawl bigger and making a very fitted, shaped garment fit. It's totally different. So you can't really compare.
Right.
But prioritizing doing that well in your patterns is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something that lots more designers could do, but maybe we haven't thought before that it was possible or that it was useful, because I think a lot of designers think, this is my design, this is what it is, and that's where my obligation stops.
Right.
And that's a fair point. But if your pattern does have some simple modifications you can make, and for a little bit of extra effort, you can communicate to your knitters how to do that, isn't it worth doing it so that more people can see that, yes, actually this pattern is for me and I feel confident that I can make it work for me? I mean, that's more sales. That's what we want, isn't it?
I love that. I love what you just said so much.
Oh,
I love what you just said so much. Isn't it
worth it? So
yeah, I mean, it is to me because I want to wear it.
Yeah. Do we need to ask ourselves, what is our priority to our customers? Do we want to help them out? And if it's not that much more work. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do.
We're going to take a little sideways. Amy.
Oh, here she goes.
Yeah.
Amy is also a knitwear designer. Are you your fit, model, and sample size? And if not, what is your sample size when designing?
You're looking at it. I am the primary fit model is how I would describe it. There's actually a page on my website where I have details of every foot model I use and all of their measurements and photos of the garments on those fit models. So you can understand when you can see, okay, this one looks like it's a bit baggier than this one. You can see the measurements of the sample and the model and understand exactly why. So yes, I am my fit model. This is my sample size. I'm wearing it right now. But I don't know if you can see behind me, there's a pink one on a mannequin. The mannequin is my second fit model. Not as good as me because it doesn't move or have arms or anything, but it's that one's about a UK size 14 to 16. I think it's a 41-inch bust. So it's sort of small, fat, kind of average for the UK kind of size. So I start with my size and I go up and down from there. And then I knit a smaller one in a closer to straight size, just to check that by starting at the bigger end, I haven't gone completely off book. But of course, that's what the standard size charts are for, to keep you in track, isn't it? And I've actually just managed to recruit a third fit model who I'm not allowed to tell you who it is, but it is a he. So that's going to be very interesting.
That is so exciting.
Yeah, more shapes.
More shapes. So that we have a question for you about that. How do you approach choosing sizes for your designs? Like,
it's maybe the hardest part of the job because my starting point is I want to include everybody. If you look at something I've done and think I like that, I want you to have it. I want it to fit you. I want you to love it when you're done with it. I mean, I've knit things that haven't come out right and been so upset. I don't want anybody else to have that experience with one of mine. I would be just as distraught as you are, I promise you. But on the other hand, I can't grade 500 sizes. I have to stop somewhere. So what I do is I try and stick to the 30 to 60-inch bust. If anybody wanted a size outside of that range, I would be more than happy to grade it and add it in. Just email me, it's done. That's fine. But what I try and do instead is with all the garments, I try and focus on shape inclusion as well as size inclusion, because I think that is what will really help make sure that the garment works for you. You know, it's like I was saying at the beginning, it's all very well having a jumper that goes up to my size, but if it doesn't suit my shape, it's still not serving me. Right. So I have to draw the line somewhere, but also I'm trying to make sure that as many different shapes and proportions as possible can make those size ranges work for them.
So does that limit how many sizes you can have? Like, say, a pattern goes from a 30 to a 60-inch bust, like you said, but maybe only has 5 or 6 sizes. Or would you have, it goes from a 30 to a 60-inch bust and you have maybe 10 sizes? Like, how many sizes within that range? How do you approach that? Like, how do you get there?
Well, officially, the first garment that I'm putting out technically has 144 sizes, because the body and the sleeves are entirely interchangeable, and there are 12 body sizes and 12 sleeve sizes. Oh. So by doing that,
so within that 30 to 60 range, you have a lot of, you're able to make, so you're able to make it more specific, more well-fitting, and not as broad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the difficulty with the ranges and the number of sizes is that it really depends on the design. You know, if I just use this one as an example, because I know the numbers, one pattern repeat of this lace pattern is 1.5 inches wide. So if you're adding the same to the front and the back, then you're working in 3-inch increments, which is pretty good for garment spacing. If you were doing something that was a much bigger scale, then you're limited in how many sizes you can have in that range.
Right.
So part of what I do in terms of thinking about inclusivity is just rejecting off the bat any ideas where the scale is so big that I can't do suitable increments for sizing. So when I do a 30 to 60-inch range, for this one, it's 30 to 63 inches, and that's the 12 body sizes. And I think that's about right, because it's not just about how many sizes you have, it's about the increments between the sizes.
Right.
You know, if the sizes were jumping up in 10-inch increments, that's probably not going to work for a lot of people who are between those sizes, because there's too much variance in the ease, especially actually on the lower end. Because smaller bodies need less ease than bigger bodies do. So it's really hard to have like one guideline that will work for every pattern I ever do, because I don't know what ideas I'm going to have in future. But generally speaking, I do try and keep the scale of the repeats down, so that there can be lots of increments along that size range. So there are lots of sizes to choose from.
Yes.
And then with all of the sort of the shape inclusion aspects as well, like the mix and match body and sleeve sizing, including instructions for adjusting length on the body and on the sleeves. One of them has optional waist shaping, things like that. It means that even if, you know, if you've got a 52-inch bust and you're looking for 6 inches of ease, I've only got 5 in this. It's close enough because it's a good fit everywhere else.
Fabric, right?
You know, yeah.
So
it all depends.
There's some give there with knitting too. So
yeah,
sometimes that can help bridge that gap between sizes, but
yeah,
it's not a cure-all for sure. So
yeah, I mean, you can't just throw more ease on it and call it a bigger size. It doesn't work that way. Because then you get massive necks and they fall down, and that,
well, yeah. So
you don't get a good fit that way.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Let's jump to that question.
Oh,
because this is how, I mean, I remember just getting on a bandwagon in 2018 about this. What do people get wrong when sizing for fat bodies?
Well, and Victoria, I want to back up because you just said that especially at the lower end of the size range, you can't have too much ease because smaller people need less ease than larger people. And that's not really true. Like you want to give the smaller bodies and the larger bodies the same amount of ease in the garment for it to fit the same. That's like the grading principle that we use. So
talk to us.
Talk
to us. Give us your opinions.
Yeah, I'm gonna. So a smaller body has less fat, and fat is far more malleable than muscle. Fat moves. I mean, you've all seen, I'll show you. Here's my arm. There's it moving. Fat moves. Right. Muscle doesn't, bones don't, ligaments don't really, not the way that fat does. So the more fat your body has, the more your body moves as you do. When I sit down, my waist measurement significantly increases. So my clothes need to allow that. And that either has to come from elasticity or from ease. So with knitwear, you have got elasticity, you have got some give. You're probably not going to bust out of anything sitting down unless it's very tight to begin with.
Right.
But it does mean that maybe you need more ease to move around in your garments if you have a larger body with more fat compared to a smaller person.
But not like inches, not like 6 or 10 inches more, which is what sometimes some people put.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends as well, because ease looks different on different bodies. I find that I don't like a lot of ease because I think it hides the definition of my body in the places where I like how it looks.
Yeah, me too.
And I don't want that. So again, because all garment designs are so different, there isn't really like a nice, neat answer to how much ease you should give a bigger body or a smaller body. It depends on the design. If your design is very fitted, then I would err on the side of a little more generous on the bigger sizes with ease, and not like 3 times as much ease, but maybe instead of 2 inches, you might want to allow 3, just up just a little bit, just to allow that movement, especially in places like around the shoulders, on the arms, around any stomachs, the bits where there is going to be fat that does move as the person does. If your design's already intended to be quite oversized and boxy, as a lot of them are at the moment, then you might not need to do that. You might already have so much ease in there that it's okay. Or it might be that there's not too much difference in, say, the neckline sizing as you get into the bigger sizes, so people can just size up if they feel they want that.
Yeah, because that's a place, like the neckline is a place where you don't need to add extra ease for a bigger size. And
necks that's, do not get fat at the same rate as everything else.
Right. So that would want
no
to
way.
As well as like your cuff measurement, your wrist measurement. You don't want it like this, And like that's where I encourage all of you to go read her article on fitting fat bodies. I'll put it into the comments so you can see it. She talks a lot about all this stuff and the differences there.
And we appreciate this perspective because I know we talked a little bit about this before the broadcast, but we're smaller. We don't have the experience of being in a larger body. So if we're designing a pattern, we really need some outside perspective and some outside help to help get us into the knowledge of how do you care for this sizing in a better way.
Yeah, well, you haven't lived it, so how can you possibly be expected to know what it's like? That's an unfair expectation. And actually, I think it's a much bigger ask for smaller designers and editors to understand what larger and fatter bodies are like than it is vice versa, because there's so little information out there coming from fat people talking about what it's like to live in a fat body, because there are an unfortunately high number of people who will give you abuse and say really horrible things to you for daring to say I'm a fat person and actually I don't hate it. You know, or even just I'm a fat person and this is what it's like. These are some things that are fine. These are some things that are difficult. You know, so a lot of people really aren't comfortable sharing that information and that insight. I mean, that blog post that you mentioned, I sat on that for a good month before I scheduled it.
Oh, wow.
Because I didn't expect that there would be that kind of backlash, but I feared that there might be. And I knew it would upset me if there was. So, you know, a lot of people just, especially if you're not, you know, trying to do anything business related in this area, if you're just a knitter who happens to be fat, there's nothing in it for you to take that risk. So why would you put yourself out there?
Right.
Well, we're really glad you put yourself out there.
Really glad.
Well, you know, someone had to. So
I mean, it is risky. Like, it is risky to talk about things that you know is going to invite judgment in a personal way.
Absolutely.
It's because it hurts, right? And it's really hard to do.
Of course it does.
You know, it's really hard to do, especially when, like, you know, you're thinking about your kids and like how these things are going to affect how you feel. Like, it's hard, and we are, like Sarah said, really grateful that you're writing all this stuff because it's valuable. What was that question?
Super valuable.
Oh, we have some more comments too.
Wonderful.
Let's put this. She says, curious how you're writing them with so many sizes and viability for alterations. Are you moving toward a table format for your instructions? So I just want to say, there's some tables that are in patterns that are great and helpful, right? And you plug in your numbers. And there's some tables and patterns that are like, whoa, that is too much. Like, I think that there can be a way to do it well, but it depends.
It's another, it depends. It depends on the construction method for the garment in question. So this one is a drop sleeve, which is probably the easiest one to do this way because you're already knitting the pieces separately. And the point where they join together is a nice straight line. So all you need to do to mix and match body and sleeve sizing is leave a bigger hole to put the arm in. That's literally it. And because this one is knit flat, you knit the front flat and the back flat, and then you seam up the sides underneath. So the pattern instructions just say seam as much as your sleeve size allows, and now follow sleeve sizing from here on. So you knit the body following your body size, seam according to your sleeve size, and then knit the sleeves according to your sleeve size. And the yardage is given separately, so you can choose your body and sleeve, add the numbers together, and that's your custom yardage. Ooh. So, you know, for this construction method, it's not that difficult. You know, it doesn't make the pattern or the instructions complex. It's quite a logical way of doing it once you understand how they bolt together.
It's just brilliant. I'm
Isn't it so simple once you've heard it?
The learning part of me is just going like tingling because it's so exciting. This solves a lot of issues.
Doesn't
it doesn't have to be complex. I love what you bring to it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated at all. And that's what I want. You know, I don't want knitters to have to put their numbers into a spreadsheet and work it out. For some patterns that works brilliantly. But I think that as a designer, sometimes those spreadsheets are going to throw up some numbers that don't work very well. And I think that part of my job is making those numbers work.
Yeah.
And, you know, nudging them and making those decisions as to whether we're rounding up or down. Is there a clever way of working around this? You know, so I don't really want to, I feel like those are more recipes, like very strongly guided recipes than technically a strict pattern with instructions kind of thing. And there's definitely a place for that, and it's wonderful. But I want even beginner knitters to be able to follow the vast majority of my patterns and not get confused by it, or, be unsure what they're doing. I really want everyone to have a good time and then end up with something that they love. Because, it's supposed to be fun, isn't it? It's not work.
Yes, please. Knitting is fun. That's why we all do it.
And, I'm the nerd here. I'm the one who loves a spreadsheet, who uses databases for fun, who thinks that graph paper is a good night in. Let me do that bit, because I will love it, I promise. And then you can just do the knitting and the wearing and the showing off at the yarn festivals. That's how this should go,
I love it. You're really putting your experience to task. I mean, it's really, it's expanding into this creative field, but you're just bringing a lot to the table.
Hopefully.
So we talked a little bit about ease, but let's go back to fit for larger sizes. Talk to us about what kind of strategies you implement to address the grading for larger sizes. This is something that in my grading, I usually start with the larger sizes in order to get those correct. And I know sometimes we've had conversations with other people, other designers, like, how do you do this?
Well, I think
just one more plug for Victoria's blog. She's got articles about instructions on there, which is why we were so excited to talk to her about this. Like, you guys got to check it out.
Yeah, there is a whole blog post that explains the mix and match sizing. There's a reel on my Instagram that shows it with a little diagram, so you can really understand exactly how it works. Right, yes, fit. So I think I have a bit of a leg up, to be fair, because I've got a fat body to reference right here. So I recently graded my first child's garment, and I was absolutely bricking it the whole way through because the standard size chart didn't have things like a neck measurement.
Right.
And I'm used to doing adults where you've got, 52 data points. The kids is like, here's a waist, here's a bust, they're the same anyway, here's a wrist. And you're looking at it and it's like, okay, so a 2-year-old is this much and a 4-year, there's not much difference, but I suppose that's about right for 2 and 4-year-old, but I don't have a 2 and a 4-year-old to hand, so I can't check. Whereas when I'm grading larger sizes, I know what I wear in high street clothes. I know my measurements pretty well because I took them when I was putting up my fit model details. So if I'm looking at the larger sizes and the numbers and thinking that doesn't feel right, I can whip out a tape measure and check myself and see if it's in the right ballpark. If it's supposed to be fitting somebody who's got 6 inches bigger on the bust than I am, I can look at that, say, neck measurement and think, well, this is my neck measurement. If someone has 6 inches more in the bust, they could be fatter than me or they could be slimmer than me and just have more boobs. So does that neck measurement make sense?
Right.
So I kind of go by my own experience, my own body, my own common sense. And then I kind of look to other people I know who are also fat or testers, other people with real bodies, and get their feedback and see how it's working. Have I got it in the right ballpark? And of course I do look at the standard measurements as well, but I think particularly with the neck, that goes up a bit higher than I think is quite right in most of the charts I've seen. Mm-hmm. So I tend to sort of...
The neck circumference?
The neck, like the neck band circumference. I mean, this is how mine fits. And that for me is a little on the wide side, but it's in the comfortable range. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is 2 inches smaller than the size chart says it should be based on my full bust.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've deviated a bit there, but with good reason, because I can see on my own body that wasn't going to fit. That was going to be hanging off my shoulders and that wasn't going to work for me.
Right.
So it is really difficult because I know that every decision I make is going to be right for some people and wrong for others. Mm-hmm. So again, this is coming back to trying to support knitters through making their own customizations and getting things that are going to fit them the way they want to.
And giving them guidance how to do that.
Yeah, and I think actually the most important thing that I do is to give the full schematic and every measurement
Woo,
up
woo.
front before you buy anything, because how else are you going to know if it's going to fit you?
You need to know information. You have
We
to
need
know
Right?
like
that.
we need like fireworks and cheering.
I know.
It's like, yeah,
Yes, please. Yes,
Well,
please.
it just baffles me that that wouldn't be available. I mean, you don't go online and buy a top and they don't give you the measurement. They're there, aren't they? There's a size chart and they say these are the measurements, and you say that's not for me, or brilliant, that will fit. Thank you, in my cart. What? Why would it be different for a pattern?
Yeah.
you,
Pattern
you
is
need to know,
clothing, right?
right? Well, it's a purchase. How are you supposed to decide if this purchase is right for you if you're not given that information up front?
Yeah.
You know, I think maybe, and I think this is definitely true of me as well, maybe like a year or 2 years ago. I think some designers are so worried and they don't have the confidence that they've made the right decisions. They don't want to put that information out there because maybe they think it's inviting criticism of people saying, oh, this isn't right, this is outrageous. But I think what everybody needs to accept, every designer, every knitter, we need to accept that there's no one pattern out there that's going to be for everybody.
Sure.
Well,
There just isn't.
designers have told me in the past that they don't like to give the schematic and the measurements before purchase because they think it's like giving the pattern away. And I've tried to explain that, like, if anyone's going to reverse engineer your whole pattern and all the details of it from your schematic, like,
all the power to
it. I mean, you know, that's not, it's not going to happen.
If that's all there, if that and a stitch pattern is all there is in your pattern file,
yeah,
where's the rest of it?
I
don't mean to be rude, but there's more to a pattern than the sizing.
Yeah, it's just false logic. You know, it's something that's never been didn't used to be done. So, you know, because so people think, oh, I can't do that, you know.
Yeah, but
and it's such a good idea.
You can and you should, I think. You know, if you're someone like me who has frequently spent time looking at knitting patterns before I started designing and thinking, I want to knit that, but I don't know if it will fit me. After a couple of times where you buy it anyway because you really love it and you're disappointed, you just stop buying them.
Yep.
So if you're not sharing that sizing information up front, if you're not sharing the yardage, if you're not sharing the basic information that knitters need to decide if this pattern is for them or not, the more marginalized knitters, the knitters who don't have the funds to waste, the knitters who don't have the emotional reserves to waste on being disappointed, we're just not going to buy from you.
Well, and there's so much more you need than the bust information. Like you need
you need every measurement.
You need those other measurements.
Yeah, and you need to know exactly what modifications are included in the pattern and how much information. Is this a step-by-step modification that's included, or is it like general guidance? You need the yardage. I mean, the information I've got to put out ahead of purchase for this pattern is a 3-page document that has a swatch that's written and charted. It has the full yardage breakdown for bodies and sleeves separately, so you can work it out. It's got the yardage for adding length to the body. So if you want to adjust that, because you can't see, but this one's cropped because that's what I like. But if you want to make a full length one, the yardage is in there, and not just it's meters as well as yards. Everything is both. You know, because this is all information you need. It's all very well the pattern listing saying, oh, you can make it longer. Well, I can make anything longer if I just keep knitting it. But I need you to know that the pattern is going to help you do that. Right. So that if maybe you're a beginner knitter or you're thinking, well, I haven't done lace before, I'm not sure if I can pull this off, I want you to feel confident that you can.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know, I want knitters to feel like I've got your back while you're knitting this. I've thought of what you're going to need. I've already given it to you. And all you need to do is, you know, knit, enjoy, brag, the fun bits, pick some yarn.
I love it. Sorry, I threw up the question too soon.
No, that's great.
So Jenna is a colleague of ours. She's a tech editor, and she says, I really love the idea of getting the schematic first. Do you have advice on how we as knitters can advocate for more designers to start providing that up front? Aside from the, yes, we should do it.
I mean, I would just try asking politely, do you have a schematic for this pattern, and could I see it before purchase to make sure it would fit me? And if a designer doesn't want to share that, then I mean, you could try getting into a back and forth and explaining, how it's going to enable you to make a sale. But if they're reticent, they're reticent.
Yeah.
Some people will always disagree on that one, I think.
Yeah. I think it's good to advocate for ourselves, though, too. Like,
yeah,
hey,
absolutely.
I want to buy your pattern.
I'd love to give you my money. Please help me do that. Phrase it like that.
Exactly.
Designers like that.
I want to give you some money. Can you give me some info first?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. Thank you for that.
In addition to, oh, go ahead, Sarah.
No, go ahead.
In addition to like offering the schematic, what would you want all designers to educate themselves about these topics, about fitting fat bodies and fitting more sizes that they may not already know? Like, what do you think? What would you like people to be, learning more about, designers?
Well, I think that's a really hard one because, as I said earlier, there's not an awful lot of information, candid information out there from fat people to give you much guidance. So I think the first thing I would say is that if a fat person is taking the time to give you feedback, if it's one of your test knitters, if it's someone on Instagram, even if they've said it maybe in an unkind way, try and hear their point and try and work out, the functional criticism that they're giving you, and try and let them have the emotions and put yours aside. And it's not a personal criticism of you, but it is very personal for them. So things can get a bit, tense. Because you do start to feel quite excluded and ignored and unloved when pattern after pattern just doesn't fit you. And, you ask a designer for a schematic and they say, oh, I'm not giving that away for free. And, you start feeling like just no one wants you here. And maybe you should just go back to having clothes that don't fit from the shops, which is ironic.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the whole thing with like my mother and my aunt. Like my aunt made all her clothes because there weren't clothes for her, right?
Yeah, so, exactly.
So when you're then in a position like I knit for my mom, and you go to make your own clothes, and you still, can't find a pattern that will work for you. It's a really, like you said, you can't be surprised if people are giving comments or feedback that is like frustrating.
And they're not. They are frustrated, and
so I love your advice to like listen to your knitters, listen to the people who are saying from people who know.
Yeah, exactly. That's
listening
exactly
to people's experiences.
Absolutely. And it's very difficult for me to talk about specifics because the only fat body that I've ever lived in is mine. And it has changed somewhat over the 20 something years of adulthood that I've had. But I've always been 5'4" or thereabouts. So I don't know what it's like to be tall and fat. Right. I can't imagine how long it takes to knit a jumper if you're 6 foot and also fat. I mean, I get bored knitting a jumper when it's cropped just for my body because it takes too long and I'm impatient. So I can only really talk about the things that affect me personally. And I also need to be taking notes from people who are in fat bodies that are shaped differently to mine. There are fat people whose stomachs are actually quite flat. That is not me.
Right.
So that's something that I know about, and maybe some other fat people don't. And the struggles and the fit challenges are all so unique. And because it's so emotional as well, some of the challenges I have fitting my body they're not necessarily a challenge because of my shape or because of the way clothes fit me. I mean, they are, but they're mostly a challenge because of how my body got to be that shape and how emotional that is for me. So when those things become prominent, it brings back some painful memories, and it feels 10, 100 times worse than it might otherwise do. So again, it's really just a case of listening to every fat person who is kind of brave enough to tell you what it's like to have their body.
And I love what you said about think about what's behind the question and behind the criticism and behind the what might seem upfront as an like something hard. There's actually some really valuable things that as a designer you can take away into your business by listening to what your customer's really asking for. What is it that they need? And I think this is a good business model. I mean, I would say, hey, how about a poll? Let's do a poll.
Let's do a poll. Let's collect some data. I'll do some graphs. I'll crack Airtable out. It'll be brilliant.
Oh, your nerd came out again. I love it.
It happens a lot.
But this is so important because I think we can get caught up even in talking about the issue of size inclusivity. We can get caught into the emotions of it, but we miss the value that can get added and the amount of acceptance and love that can come out of providing something for the creative outlet for in these sizes. It is emotional, but we also go and say, acknowledge the emotions, but step beyond and go, how can we work with this? It's super valuable.
Absolutely. And sometimes those emotions are really strong, but they're also really positive.
Yes.
You know, when I started talking about this jumper and how it fits and how I designed it specifically to fit my fat arms, so many people said, I've got arms like that too. Jumpers never fit me. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'll finally be able to knit myself my first garment. And some of them, I sat down one evening and I got I'm in danger of running my mascara again. It was so emotional for me to read them and think, my God, 2 years ago, I had 2.5, maybe 3-ish at this point. I had a whim to keep myself occupied. And now there are people who are going to take that massive step into knitting garments because of something I've done. What? Right. How did that happen? But also, yes, because why didn't we have that already?
Exactly. You know, why did we not have that already? I mean, if you ever needed proof that it's important, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, listening to people's experiences about this, how can you need any more proof that this is important to do? You know?
Absolutely.
And I love Jenna's point, like, how can we support designers to doing this? Like what?
Yeah.
You know.
But I think it's okay. I'll be honest with you, Victoria. If you are the person who meets this need in the market, who hears people, who understands and listens and provides the excellent pattern, okay. If you are it, why, if somebody doesn't want to spend the time to do this, I don't know if they should give themselves a halfway, oh, well, I'll just do it to be accommodating.
Sarah,
I totally agree. Actually,
in it to win it. And if you are there, okay, then you grab that part of the market. Maybe I'm just too much, but
no, you're right.
No.
You guys, you know what? You know what? Sarah and I have been seeing so much of this past couple of years. People who are being size inclusive and doing a really bad job and not caring enough to correct what's wrong to make the garments fit well. And so that's worse, right? It's worse to say
halfway.
It's worse to say that you have all these sizes to offer, but they don't fit. That's worse. It's not better. And we've been seeing a lot of that.
I've been there. It's a huge disappointment. And again, it's a really big emotional thing. But
right. Oh, exactly. So it's not better, you know, to, like you're Sarah saying, and like you're saying, if it's better to do it if you intend to do a good job and you're going to do the work to make sure it's done right.
Yeah. Well, this is where I'm trying to be really open about exactly what it is I'm doing, especially with regard to shape inclusivity rather than size, because things like the mix and match body and sleeves on a drop shoulder, it's so simple.
Right.
That's something that I think designers, even if maybe they don't do the full size inclusive size range, maybe they can do that, and that will include more people. And everything that can be done is something. You know, no one designer has to shoulder the burden of meeting every single knitter's needs with every single pattern they ever put out. It's just not possible.
Right.
You know, I've designed this jumper. I think it's beautiful. I love wearing it. There's going to be people it's just not for whatever reason. Maybe they don't like the way it fits. Maybe they just don't want to do lace. Whatever the reason is, I cannot possibly please everybody.
Yes.
And I don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I'm not going to stand on a soapbox and say every single designer should be size inclusive and shape inclusive and you should show 5 million different yarns at all price points. No. That's outrageous. You will never be paid enough to do that. Stop. Stop now. Deep breath.
Yeah.
What I would say is look at what other people are doing, look at the options, look at how it's done, and find things that you're confident you can do well, that you can work into your process, that work for the sort of things you like to design and make, and do those.
Right.
Because as a community, we don't need every single designer to do everything. We need enough designers to be doing all the things that the knitters have choice in what, so that they can make things that are comfortable, that are functional for the activities they want to perform, that suit them, that let them express themselves and make them feel like themselves when they walk out. You know, that they want to brag about when they go to a yarn show. It's not, oh, I've got to wear something I knit, but it doesn't really quite fit. And you know, but I'll just hold myself very still so it looks good. No, that's rubbish.
Agreed.
So I've forgotten how I got onto this now. I'm in full rant mode. Sorry.
I love it. I love it.
How did I get
here? Golden gems. We had some questions. Oh, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, questions are good.
Question. Throw one up.
Yeah, lots going on. Let's see, we got that one. Oh, yeah. Big question. Can you see? Oh, so I'll read it. I love your attention to pattern accessibility and would love to hear more. What sorts of alterations are you making to your PDFs? What resources can you recommend to learn from?
Yeah. Okay. So I have 2 versions of every pattern that I put out. There's the main pattern format, which is written to be as clear and concise as possible. It's checked for colorblind friendliness. There's an online tool where I upload anything that's meant to convey information rather than just being a pretty picture. That gets checked for colorblind friendliness. So there's a couple of years ago, I put out a collection of mitts, fingerless mitts, and there's a diagram that shows you exactly where you're increasing and decreasing on the thumbs. And that's got color coding on it. So that was checked that it still makes sense in grayscale, that it's suitable for all different types of color blindness, that kind of thing. Then there's the second format, which I generally call the PCSR format, which is print challenge and screen reader friendly. Sorry, it's a mouthful for me.
Love it. PCSR.
And that PCSR. It is a totally different format, and the file is huge because the font is all 24-point Arial. Some of it's bold, no italics. Everything is written out in full, so there's no K1, P1. It says knit 1 per 1. It's written out it's written in a very specific style. There's sort of a separate style guide for that one that I follow to make sure that it is compatible with a screen reader. And I learned about that from a course that a lady called Renee Van Hoy puts out there. She has some vision challenges, and she's a really big and successful advocate for low vision and blind knitters. I think she does loom knitting herself. So she's put it, it's like a video course, and there's a supplementing. I
can put a link to that in the comments too.
There's a link to it on my website as well. There's a whole page that explains the accessible patterns, and there's a link to it there.
Yeah, I think it's only
her
here. So.
Did you? Fantastic.
Yeah,
then you know Renee.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely recommend that course, and included in that there's sort of the guidelines and the style guide to help put the patterns in that format. I do want to say it is a lot of work because you can't really just copy and paste and reformat. It's very much typing it all out again.
Right.
But the other thing I would say is that if you do that before you send it to your tech editor, you've caught most of your mistakes already.
That's one way to check a pattern.
Right? Do it twice.
Yes.
And if you're me and you then knit a second sample, there's nothing in it by the time the tech editors get their hands on it. Sorry, but
it's true. It's true.
So I love this. You got a comment from Sarah. Sarah says, I would rather a designer be upfront and say, I'm not currently knowledgeable enough to design well for larger sizes, but here are the people that are designing well larger sizes. And Natalie totally agrees with her.
Yeah.
Honesty needs to be welcomed, Natalie says.
Yeah.
And because when this first became first got started talking about a few years ago, that was one of the answers that Sarah and I would say, like,
yeah,
why are your patterns not size inclusive? Whatever. Well, one very valid reason is that I am just not knowledgeable enough to do a good job, or it's not something I feel comfortable doing because I don't want to do it poorly. I mean, that's a real reason.
That's valid.
Right. Yeah. And it's, but it's not like exclusive, right? Like Sarah said, you can be supportive of designers who are doing that well. It's not like you can't be just because you're not doing it, Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Because it's worth doing it well, right? And if,
of course.
Like you guys,
a job done badly should not have been done at all, in my opinion.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the other thing I would say is that there are plenty of knitwear designers who do garments who don't grade their own patterns. They have an editor grade them for them. Mm-hmm. So maybe one option, if your business budget allows, is to grade the sizes you're comfortable with doing yourself and hire someone to grade the bigger sizes for you.
Right.
Maybe try it for one pattern and see what it does to your sales. Maybe you'll find out that actually you get a bigger bump and you end up making more profit on that pattern because you've expanded your audience. Mm-hmm. If your funds allow, it's worth a try. See how it went. Everyone's finances are different. I don't know what's going to work for other people. I do pretty much everything myself. So it's just, more time at the spreadsheet for me, which it pays for itself. So that's all good. But this, again, no, I don't think any one designer should be trying to be everything to all people. If it's really not something that you can do and do well, then you shouldn't be doing it. Mm-hmm. But also, I would encourage designers to think about why they can't do it well and just be open to whether there are opportunities that you can take advantage of that will allow you to become good at them, because that's one way to grow your business. It will increase your skill set.
Yes.
It'll increase your market, maybe increase your sales. That's one way to grow. You can grow out as well as up, which is, I think, an apt analogy here.
So a little side topic back to a question we had for you was, why do you choose to use a pay it forward fund on your site? Maybe this needs to be explained what exactly it is too.
Yeah. So the pay it forward fund is a way for somebody to buy a pattern for somebody else and for the whole process to be anonymous. So almost all of my patterns, the accessory patterns, are £5, and the garment patterns are all going to be £10. So you can contribute to the Pay It Forward fund by buying a credit for £5, and that goes into a pot. And then anybody who can't afford to buy one of my patterns can request one. It's almost anonymous. I have to have their email address to send them the pattern, but I don't ask for your name. I don't ask for an explanation, none of that. Just email pattern. That's it. And then I assign one of the credits in the pot to the request, or two if it's a garment, and I send you the pattern. I do it through PayHip, which is what powers my website, or the e-commerce part of it. So you get updates, you get your download link exactly as if you bought it yourself. You just didn't pay for it. And that's something I really wanted to do, because I think the simplest way to put it is that a knitter's ability to pay for my work has absolutely no bearing on its value. My work has value. Right. I do a lot to put my patterns together. And like I said before, I'm doing it all myself. The only thing that someone else does is tech editing. I do the photography, I do the accessible format, I do all of the social media stuff, which I absolutely loathe. I'm sorry, everybody, but I hate it.
Same.
I feel so phony.
Same.
And so awkward all the time. So I don't want to just give my work away for free, because I feel like that not only devalues my work, but the work of every other designer who's out there doing the hard things, learning how to grade the bigger sizes, finding inclusive and diverse models to show their garments on. We all deserve to be paid for that work.
Yes.
And someone else not being able to afford to pay for it doesn't change that. But at the same time, someone else not being able to afford to pay for my work doesn't mean that they don't deserve to have it. I think my work's pretty good. I think it's quite nice. I like people having nice things. We should all have nice things. So this is a way that people who are able to give a bit more are able to do that and to sort of pass it on, kind of like, buying the next coffee in line, except a bit more purposeful. So
buying the next sweater in line.
Yeah. Or the next shawl or the next mittens or whatever it is. Yes. It's really like, I think a win all round.
This is the best explanation and defense I have ever heard for charging more for your patterns. I love it. I love it.
So but if you want to know the real reason, it's because I realized I could do it all in Airtable and I wanted to make another database. No, it's not. It's all the good reasons. But
I'm really kidding. It's just a joke.
It's not really about building databases.
Well, it was a little bit. I did enjoy it. Let's put it that way.
I love it.
But it's just something that needs to be there. There are so many people now who are having to use food banks, and there are kids at school who can't afford their uniforms, and it's a nightmare out there under our Tory government. So if this is one little thing I can do to bring a tiny bit of something happy to other people, then wonderful. And if I get to make a database out of it, all the better.
I love it.
Awesome.
Bravo.
I'm so glad that we asked you that, because that's basically the best explanation I've heard for like patterns being, designers' work being valuable. I love it.
Well, of course it's valuable. I mean, it's work. Just because capitalism says it's a girly hobby and you don't deserve to make a profit off it, that doesn't mean that's right.
No.
When has capitalism ever been right? I mean, the whole thing is such a bizarre, arbitrary concept of the work that people choose to value under capitalism and the work that they don't is mind-blowing to me. I'm not playing that game.
Awesome.
If I can break those rules, I'm gonna.
Excellent. Well, we have a few more questions. Christina, what do you want to go for next?
Well, we did get another question in the comments, and I think it's good to ask because we're super resource hounds, so I think we should ask it.
Yeah.
She's wondering if you have favorite resources for designing for larger bodies. That there's a million sweater books out there, but do you have any favorites that you would recommend?
Well, I can tell you what's on my shelf. Oh no, I can't. I put stuff in front of it. Sorry, there's clutter off screen.
Yeah, no. I'm blocking my clutter. See, clutter.
Okay, so I've got Amy Herzog's, I think it's called The Ultimate Sweater book.
Ultimate Sweater book.
That's the one. Yeah,
Ultimate
that was really good for sort of breaking down the different construction methods and then understanding how they all go together. The one that I really enjoyed reading was Deborah Newton's Good Measure, which is an absolute nightmare to get hold of. I think it's out of print, and it's
like out of print.
Yeah. I had a safe search set up on eBay for it, and it popped up, and I snagged it for $10, and I was so happy that day. But yeah, I'm happy to lend it out if anyone's local. Maybe your local library has a copy, or maybe a friend has one.
A lot of her books are in our local libraries, even though they're out of print. Yeah. So I would start there.
I gotta
Yeah,
write that one down.
the other thing that might be helpful is to look at size charts for plus size clothing retailers and see what kind of numbers they're working with and what measurements they're doing. You can look at plus size sewing patterns as well to get an idea of those measurements. I mean, there's an awful lot of overlap between sewing garments and knitting garments. I mean, sewers have it easy. They start with fabric, we start with string. But other than that,
Right.
in terms of shaping and how pieces fit together, there's a lot to be worked out from there. I started sewing before I started knitting. And I think if you are designing, I think it's worth having a basic understanding of how to sew a garment together. You know, because sometimes you do that, you knit the pieces and then you sew them together. That's how seam garments work. And I know that's not the fashion at the moment. It's all very much seamless in the round. But I think if you go back and understand how the individual pieces shape and how they go on a body and how they slot together, that really helps you to see where things get bigger on larger bodies and where they don't so much.
And then how to address making them fit better.
Yeah. I mean, I think it starts with understanding what shapes occur in fatter bodies and how things can get bigger and at what sort of rate. And it does vary, especially in the bust and especially in the stomach and especially in the upper arms. But there are some sort of key truths, like necks do not get fat at the same rate as busts, neither do wrists. So getting sort of a feel for what's what.
Is there a
really
sewing pattern company that you might recommend people look at or purchase to get an idea? That does
there's
larger bodies better. Again?
Cashmerette are pretty good. Yeah, they go up quite large. There's also Helen's Closet.
Okay.
And there's Muna and Broad, and I think
just found Muna and Broad.
It's Muna and Broad. Are they the ones with the size inclusive guarantee, where if they don't have your size, they'll grade it for you?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I've heard about them a lot.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's Muna and Broad.
Pretty impressed by them.
So yeah, me too.
So that's fantastic. Thank you for telling us the details behind the scenes.
Muna and Broad, they say that if it doesn't fit, that they will grade it to your size.
Yeah.
So here it's in the comments.
Yeah, stealing that. If my jumpers don't fit, I'll grade your size. That's fine.
Well, so you said.
Yeah, I'll get in the spreadsheet and I'll love it.
Spreadsheet is your happy place. That and the data.
Oh yeah. Yep, spreadsheets, databases, anything with lots of numbers, trying to make sense out of it. It doesn't have to be numbers. It can be, data of any kind, really. I'm that kind of nerd.
I love it. Own it.
We've already reached an hour, and everybody in the comments is like, we need another hour. I mean, we do. We haven't even gotten to our silly questions yet, and we're still going. I mean, we need more time.
Let's get to the silly questions. Let's see. What are you excited about now?
This. So this is my very first garment design. It's called Roseability. I've talked a bit about it already. It's 30 to 63 inch bust. The body and the sleeves are sized separately. You can do it short sleeve as well, like on the mannequin. You can make it longer if cropped isn't your thing. There's so many customizations you can put in on it. The only thing I didn't put in, I think, was waist shaping, because the lace makes that a bit complicated. So I didn't put that in that one. And then that one over there, the brightly colored mold thing on the door, that's foundation. That's what's coming next, which I haven't said anything about yet. So you're kind of hearing it first. That one does have waist shaping. Marling, yeah. So I use an advent kit to do that one. And it's 2 strands of fingering, and you swap one at a time to get a nice subtle blend. And the pattern has full instructions. It steps you through all the math. So you can do an advent kit, you can do a fade kit if you want to, you can use your leftovers, or you can just decide that you've got enough scraps and just, chaos mode, whatever. Or you can just knit it in DK and be done with it. That's good too. Which is what I'm going to do for my next sample for it. So yeah, that's what I'm excited about now. garments.
I love that so much. I love when there's more than one sample, if there's more than one yarn choice. Like I want to see it, you know, in all the ways it can be done. I love that. It's so good.
Yeah, that's one of the other things I do, as well as I do 2 samples for every garment in different sizes and different yarns. One of the yarns has to be under 10 pounds per 100 grams. And I also do, is a metric buttload an official term, but I do a whole bunch of swatches in different yarns so you can get an idea for how they knit up, how they look in the stitch pattern, all that kind of stuff to help you make a good choice. Because I want you to love it. Because I love it.
So, more fun questions. What is your favorite yarn, and does it change, or do you have a favorite?
Or favorite type of yarn?
Well, you know, officially and sensibly, my favorite yarn is the right one for the project, because it does depend.
That was a side step.
It does depend. But unofficially, my favorite yarn is Giddy Aunt Yarn's Merino Chunky, because it's a glorious yarn. It's merino, so you know where you are, you know what's coming. It's superwash, so it's fairly robust. And it knits up so quickly because it's chunky. So it's a really quick win. I've been knitting a blanket with it for literally like 3 or 4 years now. Just lots of individual squares in beautiful yarn. And when I've got enough and I feel like it, I'll sew them all together and have a huge, amazing blanket. It makes me feel calm and serene and like all is well in the world.
I understand that.
But yeah,
that's a good yarn.
Basic merino girl, but beautiful merino.
Yes, exactly. All right, more fun questions, Christina?
Yep, come on.
Okay. What is your favorite knitting or crochet notion? We didn't talk about crochet at all, but
no, I do crochet, but I haven't actually put out any paid crochet patterns yet. So I included it at the beginning because I wanted to keep the option open, but the more I do it, the more I think I'm going to be sticking with knitting. So sorry, crocheters. It's not that I don't love you or crochet. I'm just better at explaining knitting, I think. And if you can't do something well, you shouldn't be doing it. So my favorite notion, though, whatever I'm doing, is definitely stitch markers.
See, stitch marker for the win again.
Yeah. It has to be, right? But not those. I hate those ones.
Not these. Not these.
Yeah,
not that one.
They're not. They don't feel nice when you're using them.
They're not aesthetically pleasing enough either.
They're not sensory stimmy is the problem. They don't. I mean, they're not offensive or anything. They're just. I think we can do better.
So tell me, how can I do better?
Sorry. Well, you could borrow my friend who makes me stitch markers. She is fantastic. She doesn't sell them or anything. She just likes making beautiful things. The ones I have that she made me are definitely the most special. But you know, stitch markers are just so. Yeah, they normally have like gemstones at the bottom, and she uses that. I think it's called tiger wire at the top. Yep. So the action on it is really smooth as you're slipping. There's plenty of room to get your needle in and just, you know, flip it over. And then there's a beautiful like globe of something underneath. And every time you see it, you know, when you get to the beginning of the round, you slip it and you're like, oh, Maria made me that. Oh, and you keep going. And like, isn't that the sweetest thing?
For you, Victoria. You can make a post about your stitch markers.
Yeah, I could.
Right?
Well, especially the sensory experience, because I think this is part of why we craft. This is why we knit. Yeah. There's something about
it feels good.
Hand, tactile, and there's that soothing rhythm. And then, of course, if there's something beautiful on there that's handmade by a friend, oof, even better.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do better than that, can you?
No.
I love it.
That's the most expensive diamond stitch marker in the world isn't as good as one that someone who loves you made.
I agree with that. Totally. Okay, but stitch markers won again. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, how can they not?
Question, stitch markers.
If you want a more interesting answer, the thing I've been using a lot at the moment is a stitch holder, but it's basically like a really thin, like teeny tiny rubber tube, and you pop it on the end of your needles, and then you just put your stitches over, pop it off. And they're malleable, so you can tie a knot in it so nothing falls off. They're great for sleeves and for, you know, putting a section on hold and picking it up again later. They're really good.
Love it.
Ooh, yeah, I wish I had one to hold up and show you.
What's that?
Yeah,
Yeah, and
Katrina's going to
they're
be going
made.
and Googling that after.
I want that.
My ones are made by a company called Knit and Living, and I bought mine direct from them, but I know they pop up at shows and things in the UK, so it's worth keeping an eye out for. And they come in a pack of like 10 and a couple of different sizes to suit different needle tips. So yeah,
Awesome.
they're pretty great.
Well, we're about ready to wrap up. So let's ask the important question of how can people find you online?
Best to start on my website, which is victoriamarchantknits.com. And then if you want to find all of the socials and the YouTube and all of that, there are links there to find me everywhere.
That's
pretty much than I am.
And her link to her website is in the comments. I found the stitch thingies.
Yay! They're good, aren't they?
And on Instagram, you're at Victoria Marchant Knits.
Yes.
And we just can't wait to see this new sweater coming out. I'm thrilled because I have been saving all the little leftovers from my sock projects, and I have this this giant bag of all the good colors.
Oh, dude, me too. I have so many. Like, I mean, that
there
really
you go.
could be my scrappy sweater. My dad is so mad about all these odds and ends I don't use. It's like he doesn't understand.
No, use them up, make a jumper, brag at yarn.
That's what we're gonna do. now we know where all those scrappy yarns are going for.
Yeah.
In the next.
And technically, it's free because they're scraps.
They're scraps, sort of. So they've been taking up space in my drawer for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Room for more yarn. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We couldn't have asked for a more interesting discussion and more on point for everything that we wanted to talk to you about. This has been super valuable and super exciting. So,
thank you so much for having me.
You opening up and your honesty and like sharing your experience with us. Thank you so much. It's so important.
You are entirely welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're going to let you go, so we'll say goodbye, and you can hang around backstage if you want. We'll see you in a minute. And, whoops, sorry, let her go too quick there.
I feel so big now.
Yeah, we're big now. So, Christina, we have some announcements to make.
Oh, well, the first announcement is that our book is done with, we finished the sizing standards. So Victoria, we got you for your next children's garment. It's going to have a children's sizing standard in there. We also got neck measurements and everything. So those are done and the developmental edits are done. And now we're just waiting for the copy editor to work on it. So we're not going to be working on it again until July. And we're really happy.
Yes.
Because it's been a lot of work.
So a little bit about July. We're taking July off from the broadcast. This is our summer break. We've got other plans to do with family and friends, and we'll be back August 15th at 12 p.m. Eastern time, same channel, but not until August. So we'll see you guys then. And we wanted to invite you to come and join us on our Patreon. Without our patrons, Tech Tip Talk would not be possible. And we just want to say thank you again to all of our patrons who support this broadcast and make it possible. And allow us to bring on some pretty awesome guests.
Yes. And where we will not be taking July off.
No, we're not taking out July there. So if you come over and you join us in Patreon, you also get access to our Discord network where we are much more active there and lots of conversations going on all the time about knitting, pattern writing, and tech editing in general. And twice a month, we do a knit night. Where we sit for an hour and we knit and we chat about all things nerdy and all things tech editing. And our knit night for this month, our last one for this month, is actually tomorrow. So we'd love to see you. If you want to join us, you can jump into Patreon now, and we'll see you tomorrow for knit night. Is there any other announcements that we've got?
I don't think so. Sign up for our newsletter. Because that's where all this information is going to be, we send out a newsletter once a month ahead of the broadcast that gives all this information.
Yep. And
so you definitely
replays.
want to get the newsletter. And then you get our checklist. I mean, the checklist. So good.
Yep. Our checklist that helps you get your pattern ready for the editor and saves you time on and editing costs. At least that's our hope. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to do what Victoria says and add in a clause that, you know, go ahead and throw it into the accessibility format and you'll find all your errors.
That's a good tip.
I was going to say
tip.
that is a tip that needs to get added. I love it. That was a.
And you're doing something valuable at the same time with your pattern. So.
Yep. That was gold. So
okay.
I think that's everything.
I think that's it.
See you guys in August. Have a wonderful summer.
Bye, you guys.